Will you be my mommy, please?
She was rejected on Christmas Eve until the alpha's little daughter asked, "Will you be my new mom?" The moment the little girl whispered, "Mom," to a complete stranger, the entire Silverfong pack knew the prophecy had begun. But what they didn't know is that this wolfless woman had just escaped a public rejection so brutal it sent her crashing through pack boundaries she never should have crossed. Now she's trapped in a fortress with an alpha whose dead mate was murdered by someone still living among them, a child who draws pictures of the killer in her sleep, and a bond awakening inside her body that's turning her human blood into something ancient and powerful enough to make her the most valuable target in 5 territories. Christmas Eve is in 4 days, and the man who rejected her just sent an army of rogues with one mission: retrieve the echo, or burn Silverfong to the ground trying. Hello, everyone. Before we dive into tonight's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic tales of passion, power, and forbidden love. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our story. Christmas Eve was supposed to feel warm, but for Avina Rail, it tasted like frostbite, sharp, unforgiving, and soul-deep. She had always believed in fairy tales. The kind where the wolfless girl falls in love with the future alpha, and despite all odds, he chooses her. Where Christmas miracles are real. Where loyalty, devotion, and pure-hearted love are enough to rewrite the cruelty of fate. She'd believed in him, Zayden Crow. Strong, kind, golden-eyed, and steady-handed. The alpha heir who used to hold her like she was made of starlight. Who whispered promises against her hair on cold nights. Who swore that her lack of a wolf didn't matter, that she was enough. For 2 years, Avina poured herself into that belief. She stitched it into every sweater she knitted for him. Every meal she cooked when he came home was exhausted. Every smile she wore even when the pack sneered at her for daring to stand beside him. And this Christmas? She'd saved every coin she earned from cleaning the pack house, mending clothes, working double shifts at the tavern, just to buy him something special. A silver compass engraved with the words, "You are my true north." She'd wrapped it in soft linen, tied it with blue ribbon, and tucked it carefully into her worn travel bag alongside the wool sweater she'd spent weeks knitting by candlelight. Because tonight wasn't just Christmas Eve.
Tonight, she was meeting his family.
The Crow family, one of the most powerful wolf bloodlines in the Northern Territories. Zayden had finally invited her to their ancestral estate, a sprawling manor nestled in snow-covered mountains, where the pack elite gathered every year to celebrate beneath crystal chandeliers and roaring fires. Avina had imagined this moment 1,000 times. She pictured his mother welcoming her with warm hands, his father nodding in quiet approval. His sister teased them about wedding dates. She imagined Zayden pulling her close in front of everyone and saying, "This is the woman I choose." Maybe he'd even propose. Her heart had beaten so fast at the thought that she'd laughed aloud in her tiny cottage, alone, spinning in circles like a fool. Hope is a treacherous thing. It makes you believe the impossible. It makes you ignore the whispers, the sidelong glances. The way Zayden had grown distant over the past few weeks, distracted, evasive, always one step out of reach. She told herself it was stress, alpha training, the weight of responsibility. She told herself love would be enough. But now, standing in the grand foyer of the Crow estate with snow melting off her threadbare cloak, Avina felt the first crack in her carefully constructed dream. The estate was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, a massive Christmas tree glittering with gold and crimson ornaments. Everywhere she looked, there were wolves, sleek, confident, dressed in finery she could never afford. And they were all staring at her. Whispers rippled through the crowd like venom. Is that her? The wolfless one? What was Zayden thinking? Avina's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. She forced her chin up, her spine straight. You belong here, she told herself. Zayden loves you. That's all that matters. But when she finally spotted him across the room, her breath caught. Zayden stood near the fireplace, dressed in a tailored black suit that made him look every inch the alpha heir. His golden eyes swept over the gathered wolves, his expression unreadable. And beside him, too close, stood a woman Avina had never seen before. She was stunning, tall, graceful, with silver blonde hair that cascaded down her back like moonlight. Her gown was deep emerald, cut to perfection, and she moved with a kind of effortless confidence that came from a lifetime of privilege. She laughed at something Zayden said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Avina's heart stumbled.
Who is she?
Before she could move, a hand touched her shoulder. She turned to find an older woman, Zayden's mother, Luna Crow, smiling at her with a warmth that didn't quite reach her eyes. Avina, dear, she said smoothly. So glad you could join us. Please come. Dinner is about to be served. The dining hall was even more magnificent than the foyer. A long table stretched beneath glittering chandeliers, laden with roasted meats, spiced wines, glazed fruits, and desserts that looked like edible art. Avina was seated near the middle, far enough from Zayden that she couldn't speak to him, close enough to watch him. He didn't look at her. Not once. The silver-haired woman, Alara, someone called her, sat directly across from Zayden, laughing, leaning in, her eyes bright with something that made Avina's stomach twist.
She tried to eat.
I tried to smile, tried to pretend her world wasn't tilting sideways. But every moment felt wrong. The way Zayden's father spoke to her with cold politeness. The way his sister avoided her gaze entirely. The way the other wolves at the table looked at her like she was a stain on expensive fabric. And then, Zayden stood. The room fell silent. He raised his glass, his expression calm, composed, every inch the future alpha. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. Christmas has always been a time for family, for tradition, for honoring the bonds that make us strong. Avina's heart pounded. Is he going to? Zayden's eyes finally met hers. And what she saw there wasn't love. It was a pity. Which is why, he continued, his voice steady, clear, cutting through her like a blade, I want to make an announcement. He turned to Alara. Smiled. Alara Ashford and I are officially engaged. She is my chosen mate. The future Luna of this pack. The room erupted in applause. Avina couldn't hear it.
Couldn't breathe.
Couldn't move. Alara beamed, lifting her hand to show off a glittering diamond ring. Zayden raised his glass higher. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, the room echoed. And Avina shattered. She didn't remember standing. Didn't remember pushing back her chair. Didn't remember stumbling toward the door as voices blurred around her. Someone laughed. Someone whispered, poor thing. Zayden didn't follow. Outside, the snowstorm had worsened. Wind tore at her cloak. Ice stung her face. Her lungs burned as she ran, blind, desperate, drowning in a pain so deep she thought it might kill her. She collapsed in the snow beneath a cluster of pine trees, gasping, shaking, her body folding in on itself. He chose someone else. He never loved you. You were always invisible. The stars above were cold and distant. And Avina Rail, who had believed in fairy tales, in love, in Christmas miracles, learned the truth. Hope is treacherous. And sometimes, the person you love most is the one who destroys you. Have you ever believed in someone so deeply, only to discover they never believed in you? What would you have done in Avina's place? The world became a blur of white and red. White snow, red taillights, white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, red eyes burning with tears she couldn't stop. Avina didn't remember getting into her car, didn't remember starting the engine or pulling away from the Crow estate, leaving behind the golden glow of their perfect Christmas celebration. All she remembered was running from the applause that had thundered in her ears like mockery, running from Alara's diamond ring catching the chandelier light, running from Zayden's calm, composed face, The face of a man who had just erased 2 years of her life with a single announcement. Alara Ashford is my chosen mate, the future Luna of this pack. The words looped in her mind like a curse, over and over, each repetition carving deeper into her chest until she thought her ribs might crack open from the weight of it. She pressed harder on the gas pedal. The snow came down in thick, swirling sheets, turning the mountain road into a tunnel of white chaos. Her headlights barely cut through the storm. The windshield wipers struggled to keep pace. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Her hands shook violently on the wheel.
Too ordinary.
That's what he'd said. Not tonight, but weeks ago, during one of their last real conversations. She'd asked him why he seemed distant, why he wouldn't meet her eyes anymore. He'd hesitated. I looked away. And then, so quietly, it almost didn't hurt at first. You're too ordinary, Avina. Too human. She'd laughed it off.
Kissed his cheek.
Told him she'd prove him wrong. What a fool you were. A sob tore from her throat. Raw. Ugly. Breaking apart in the cold air inside the car. She'd given him everything. Every piece of herself she had to offer.
Her time.
Her heart.
Her pride.
She'd endured the sneers of pack wolves who called her the stray. She'd smiled through their insults, their condescension, their barely veiled disgust. Because she thought Zayden saw something in her they couldn't. She thought he loved her. Not fit for future beta. Had he always thought that? Had he ever truly wanted her, or had she just been convenient? A distraction? Something to pass the time until someone worthy came along? Someone like Alara. Beautiful, graceful, pedigreed. Everything Avina wasn't. Everything Avina could never be. I wasn't enough, she whispered into the empty car, her voice breaking. I was never enough. The tears came harder now, hot and endless, blurring her vision until the road disappeared entirely. She didn't see the sharp curve ahead. Didn't see the patch of black ice glinting beneath the snow. Didn't realize she was going too fast. Until the car lurched. Everything happened, at once. The tires screamed. The wheels spun uselessly in her hands. The world tilted violently sideways as the car skidded off the road, plunging down an embankment into a snowdrift with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Avina's head slammed against the window. Pain exploded through her skull, white-hot, blinding. And then, silence.
Cold. Dark.
The engine ticked softly. Snow hissed against the shattered windshield. Her breath came in shallow gasps, fogging the air. She tried to move. Her body screamed in protest. Blood trickled down the side of her face, warm and sticky. Her hands trembled as she touched the wetness, staring at her crimson-stained fingers in dazed confusion. What happened? Where am I? Through the cracked windshield, she saw nothing but snow and shadows. The storm had swallowed everything. She was alone. Again. A bitter laugh bubbled up in her chest. Of course. Even the universe wanted her gone tonight. Her vision swam. Her head lolled back against the seat. Maybe it's better this way, she thought distantly. Maybe I should just let go. But then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crunching through snow. Avina's heart stuttered. She turned her head weakly toward the driver's side window, squinting through the fractured glass. Dark figures moved through the storm.
Tall.
Broad-shouldered. Too many to count.
No.
No, no, no. Panic surged through her veins, sharp and electric. They found me. Zayden's family. His pack. They'd come to finish what the rejection started, to make sure she understood she was nothing. Worthless. Disposable. She fumbled for the door handle with numb fingers, desperate to run, to hide, to... The door was ripped open. A gust of freezing wind slammed into her, stealing what little warmth remained. And then, a voice.
Deep.
Commanding. Cold as the storm itself. Bring her to the Alpha. Avina's vision blurred. She saw flashes, silver eyes gleaming in the darkness. Armor. Weapons. Wolves moving with lethal precision. Not Zayden's wolves. Who? Strong hands gripped her arms, lifting her from the wreckage with startling gentleness.
She tried to speak.
I tried to fight, but her body had nothing left. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was a symbol embroidered on the warrior's cloak. A silver crescent moon. Fangs crossed beneath it. Silver Fang. The most feared pack in the Northern Territories. Ruthless. Brutal. Unforgiving. And she was in their hands. Avina's consciousness flickered like a dying candle. In and out. Warmth.
Cold.
Voices she couldn't understand. She felt herself being carried, strong arms cradling her against a broad chest. The scent of pine and winter wind and something wild filled her senses. Where are they taking me?
Why?
Am I going to die? Her mind screamed the questions, but her body refused to obey. The world tilted again. And then, nothing. When Avina woke, she was no longer in the snow. She was lying on something soft. A bed? Her eyes fluttered open, heavy and reluctant. The room around her was dim, lit only by the flicker of a fireplace. Stone walls. High ceilings. Furs draped across the bed. Where am I? She tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her ribs, her head, her everything. A low voice cut through the shadows. Don't move. You'll tear the stitches. Avina froze. Her gaze snapped toward the corner of the room. A figure stepped into the firelight.
Tall.
Powerfully built. Eyes like molten silver that seemed to see everything. Every wound, every scar, every broken piece of her soul. He moved with the controlled grace of a predator. And when he spoke again, his voice was silk over steel. You're in Silver Fang territory now. Avina's breath caught. Silver Fang. She was in the den of wolves who answered to no one, who bowed to no law but their own. Wolves who killed without hesitation. And I'm completely at their mercy. The man's silver eyes narrowed slightly, as if reading her thoughts. You're wondering why you're still alive. It wasn't a question. Avina nodded weakly, her throat too dry to speak. The corner of his mouth lifted, barely. Not quite a smile. So am I. He stepped closer, and Avina realized this wasn't just any Silver Fang warrior. This was their alpha. If you woke up in the hands of the most dangerous pack alive, would you trust them? Or run the first chance you got? Pain woke her first. Sharp and insistent, radiating from her ribs, her head, the dozens of small cuts she hadn't yet catalogued. Then came awareness. The softness beneath her wasn't the torn seat of her wrecked car. The air didn't smell like gasoline and blood and desperation. It smelled like pine.
Smoke.
Something wild and ancient that made her wolf-less human instinct scream danger. Avina's eyes snapped open. Stone walls rose around her. Massive, gray, ancient. Not the polished marble of the Crow estate, but raw rock that looked carved from the mountain itself. Heavy wooden beams crossed the vaulted ceiling. Furs, bear, wolf, elk, draped across the enormous bed she lay in. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting dancing shadows across the room. This isn't a hospital. This isn't anywhere near civilization.
Her pulse spiked.
She tried to sit up, biting back a cry as her ribs protested violently. Her hand flew to her side and found clean bandages wrapped expertly around her torso. Someone had undressed her, treated her. Panic clawed up her throat. Where am I? The last thing she remembered was the crash. The snow. Dark figures surrounding her car. A voice like thunder commanding. Bring her to the Alpha. Oh God. Silver Fang. She was in Silver Fang territory. The pack that operated outside the Council's laws. That controlled the most brutal stretch of the northern mountains. The pack whispered about in taverns and pack houses alike, always with fear, never with anything resembling warmth. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't show mercy. So why was she still alive? You're awake. Avina's head whipped toward the voice, and immediately regretted the sudden movement as her vision swam. He stood in the doorway. No, stood was too simple a word for what he did. He commanded the space. Tall, at least 6'4", broad-shouldered, built like violence barely leashed. He wore dark clothing that seemed to absorb the firelight, black leather, reinforced fabric meant for combat, not comfort. But it was his face that stole her breath. Sharp.
Severe.
A jaw that could have been carved from the same stone as these walls. Dark hair, slightly longer on top, falling across his forehead. And eyes. God, his eyes.
Silver.
Not the soft gray of storm clouds, but molten silver. Metallic. Inhuman. Eyes that seemed to pierce straight through skin and bone to see the truth underneath. Eyes that held absolutely no warmth. He looked at her the way a scientist might examine a specimen. Clinical. Detached. Dangerous. This wasn't just a warrior. This was an alpha. And judging by the way the air itself seemed to bend around him, the way her body instinctively wanted to shrink back despite having no wolf to submit, this was the alpha. Cadian Voss. She'd heard the name before. Whispered.
Feared.
The alpha who'd taken Silverfang from a fractured, dying pack and forged it into something terrifying. Who'd killed his own uncle to claim the title. Who ruled with an iron fist and tolerated no weakness, no betrayal, no mercy. And she was in his den. Alone. Her voice came out as a rasp. She swallowed hard, tried again. Where am I? Silverfang's stronghold. His voice matched his eyes, cold, controlled, utterly devoid of softness. Northern Ridge. About 60 miles from where you crashed. 60 miles. 60 miles from the Crow estate. From Zayden. From the life that had just imploded.
Good.
She never wanted to see any of it again. But that didn't mean this was better. Cadian moved further into the room with predatory grace, each step deliberate. He didn't sit. Didn't soften his stance. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching her like she was a puzzle he hadn't decided whether to solve or discard. What's your name? Avina. The word slipped out before she could think better of it. Avina Rail. His eyes narrowed fractionally. Pack affiliation? She hesitated. What should I say? That she'd been dating the future beta of Crow Pack? That she was wolfless and worthless and had just been publicly humiliated? None, she said finally. I'm unaffiliated. Unaffiliated. He repeated the word like it tasted wrong. You're human. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you were driving through restricted pack territory in a blizzard because the man I loved just destroyed me in front of his entire family. Because I wasn't paying attention. Because I wanted to disappear. I got lost, she whispered. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to. You crossed 3 territorial boundaries. His voice cut through her explanation like a blade. Drove past 2 clearly marked warning zones. Ignored the scent markers that would make even a human's instincts scream turn back. Avina's throat tightened. She hadn't noticed. Hadn't been capable of noticing. I'm sorry, she managed. I didn't mean to. Rogues were tracking your car. Her blood turned to ice. What? 4 of them. Following your scent trail. Cadian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those silver eyes. Something sharp and deadly. They would have reached you within the hour. Probably assumed you were easy prey. Alone. Vulnerable. Human. Oh God. She hadn't just crashed. She'd been hunted. My patrol intercepted them before they found your wreck, Cadian continued. Killed 3. The 4th escaped, but he won't get far. He said it so casually, like killing was as natural as breathing. Avina's hands trembled in her lap. Why? She whispered. Why save me? I'm nobody. I'm just. That, Cadian interrupted, his gaze sharpening, is what I'm trying to determine. He took another step closer. Avina instinctively pressed back against the pillows. Rogues don't track random humans, he said quietly. They hunt for a reason. So, either you're connected to something dangerous. He leaned in slightly, and the firelight caught the hard edges of his face. Or you're dangerous yourself. I'm not, Avina said quickly, hating how her voice shook. I promise I'm nothing. I don't know why I didn't even know they were there. Then why were you on that road? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Avina's chest tightened. Because the man I loved chose someone else. Because I had nowhere else to go. Because I'm broken and lost, and I don't know how to exist anymore. But she couldn't say any of that. Not to this man. Not to an alpha who looked at her like she was a problem to solve. I was leaving somewhere, she said finally. Somewhere I didn't belong. For the first time, something shifted in Cadian's expression. Not softness, but recognition. Like he understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. Then it was gone. His face hardened again, walls slamming back into place. You'll stay here until I determine you're not a threat, he said flatly. You'll be fed,
Clothed.
guarded. But you will not leave this wing without an escort. You will not attempt to contact anyone outside this stronghold. And you will not ask questions about pack business. Understood? It wasn't a request. Avina nodded mutely. Cadian turned to leave. Wait, she blurted. He paused in the doorway, didn't turn around. Why didn't you just let them have me? Her voice cracked. The rogues. Why save someone you don't even know? Silence stretched between them, long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because Silverfang doesn't leave the weak to die. His voice was quiet.
Cold.
Final. Even when we probably should. And then he was gone. The hours that followed were strange. Avina brought food, warm stew, fresh bread, water that tasted like mountain springs. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair came to check her bandages, said nothing beyond simple instructions, and left. No one spoke to her. No one explained. She was a ghost in a stronghold full of wolves. But she heard them.
Voices in the hallway. Low.
Urgent. Don't trust it. A human shows up out of nowhere. Rogues on her tail? Could be bait. Or a spy. The alpha should have left her. You know he won't. Not his way. His way is going to get us all killed one day. Avina pressed herself against the door, heart pounding. They think I'm dangerous. They want me gone. And Cadian. He didn't want her here either. She could see it in his eyes. The way he kept distance. The way he refused to offer even the smallest comfort. She was a burden. An inconvenience. Just like she'd been to Zayden. Always too much. Never enough. That night, as the stronghold settled into silence, Avina made a decision. She couldn't stay here. Couldn't be trapped in another place where she wasn't wanted. She had to leave, even if it killed her. The stronghold was quietest in the hour before dawn. Avina had learned this over the past 3 days of imprisonment, because that's what this was, no matter how clean the sheets or how warm the food. She wasn't a guest. She was a problem waiting to be solved. And she decided she wouldn't wait for Cadian Voss to decide her fate. The hallways were lit by dying torches, casting long shadows against the stone. Her borrowed boots, too large, stuffed with extra socks, made soft sounds against the floor despite her best efforts at silence. She'd memorized the guard rotations. Watched through the crack in her door as warriors changed shifts. Note the brief window, maybe 3 minutes, when the eastern corridor was unwatched. 3 minutes to disappear. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slipped past her room, keeping close to the wall. The pack had returned her cleaned clothes, and she'd layered everything she could beneath the heavy cloak they provided. She had no plan beyond that. Away from Silverfang. Away from the whispers that followed her everywhere. Away from Cadian's cold silver eyes that seemed to see every broken piece of her. Away from the strange, terrifying feeling that had lodged itself in her chest every time Lyanna, Cadian's daughter, stared at her through the doorway before being quickly ushered away by nervous attendants. The little girl was maybe 4 or 5, with her father's dark hair and eyes that shifted between silver and gray like storm clouds. Beautiful, ethereal,
And silent.
Avina had never heard her make a sound, but she'd felt the weight of that small, intense gaze. Like the child was searching for something. Not your concern, Avina told herself firmly, pressing forward through the corridor. You're leaving. You have to leave before. A hand touched hers.
Small. Warm. Certain.
Avina's breath caught. She looked down and found Lyanna standing beside her in a white nightgown, bare feet silent on the cold stone, her tiny hand wrapped around Avina's fingers.
How?
The child shouldn't be here. It was the middle of the night. Where were her attendants? Her guards? Lina looked up at Avina with those storm cloud eyes. And then, she smiled. Not the hesitant, fragile smile of a traumatized child, but something radiant, like the sun breaking through winter clouds. Avina's heart clenched. "Sweetheart," she whispered, crouching down to the little girl's level. "You shouldn't be here. Where's your—" Lina lifted her other hand, reached up, touched Avina's cheek with fingers that trembled slightly, and spoke. "Mom?" The words shattered the silence like breaking glass. Avina's world stopped. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what she'd just heard.
Mom.
The little girl had spoken. A sound like thunder rippled through the corridor, guards emerging from doorways, weapons half-drawn, eyes wide with shock. One of them, a massive warrior with a scarred face, dropped to one knee. "Luna's mercy," he breathed. Another guard followed. Then another. "What is happening?" Avina's gaze snapped from the kneeling warriors back to Lina, who was still touching her face, still smiling, tears beginning to stream down her small cheeks. "Mom," Lina whispered again, and this time her voice broke. You came. I don't," Avina stammered, her own eyes burning. "Sweetheart, I'm not. What is this?" The voice cracked through the hall like a whip. Avina's head jerked up as Cadian Voss strode toward them, barefoot, wearing only dark pants, his chest bare and marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. His silver eyes blazed with something between fury and fear. He looked at the kneeling guards, at Avina, at his daughter, and froze. Every muscle in his body locked. Because Lina was speaking. His daughter, who hadn't made a sound since her mother died 2 years ago. Who the healers said might never speak again. Who carried trauma so deep it had stolen her voice. "I was speaking." "Lina?" Cadian's voice came out rough, broken. He took a step forward, then another, dropping to his knees in front of his daughter. "Lina, baby." But Lina didn't turn to him. She pressed closer to Avina, her small arms wrapping around Avina's neck. "Don't let them take me away," she whispered against Avina's shoulder. "Please don't leave. Please. I've been waiting so long." Avina's throat closed completely. Her arms moved on instinct, wrapping around the small, trembling body, holding this child who wasn't hers, but who was clinging to her like a lifeline. "I don't understand," Avina whispered. "I don't why." The prophecy. An elderly voice cut through the chaos. Avina looked up to see an old woman approaching, white-haired, leaning on a carved staff, her eyes milky with age, but somehow still sharp. The warriors bowed their heads as she passed. Even Cadian straightened slightly, though his gaze never left his daughter. The old woman, an elder, Avina realized, stopped a few feet away, studying Avina with an intensity that made her want to shrink back. "A soul-sight child," the elder said slowly, "speaks only once in their lifetime before their wolf emerges." Avina's heart stuttered. Soul-sight. She'd heard whispers of it. Rare children born with the ability to see beyond the physical. To sense bonds, truth, destiny. "When they speak," the elder continued, her gaze moving to Lina, "it is to acknowledge their true Luna. The one destined to lead beside their alpha. The one whose soul calls to the pack itself."
No.
That's impossible," Avina breathed. I can't be." "She spoke to you," the elder said simply. "Called you mother. There is no mistake." "There has to be," Cadian growled, rising to his feet. His eyes were wild now, something cracking beneath that iron control. "She's human. She has no wolf. No pack. No destiny," the elder interrupted quietly, "does not ask permission, Alpha." Cadian's jaw clenched, so hard Avina heard his teeth grind. He looked at Lina, at his daughter, still wrapped around Avina like she'd found something precious she refused to release. "Lina," he said, his voice gentling in a way Avina hadn't heard before. "Baby, come here. Come to Papa." Lioness shook her head, burrowing deeper against Avina's shoulder. No, she whispered. She'll leave. Everyone leaves. I have to hold on. The raw pain in Cadian's eyes nearly broke Avina's heart. I'm not. Avina tried again, her voice shaking. Lioness, sweetheart, I'm not your mother. I can't be. I was just trying to. I know you. Lioness pulled back just enough to look at Avina's face, her small hands framing Avina's cheeks. I've seen you. In my dreams. You smell like home. Like safe. Like the person who won't break. Tears spilled down Avina's face before she could stop them. This isn't real. This can't be real. She'd come here by accident. A crashed car. Wrong place, wrong time. She wasn't destined for anything. She was the girl who wasn't good enough for a beta. The wolfless nobody who. This is impossible, Cadian said again, but his voice had lost its edge. Now, it just sounded lost. She can't be. The child has spoken, the elder said firmly. The prophecy is clear. This woman is Lioness destined Luna. Whether you accept it or not, Alpha, the bond has been recognized. The kneeling warriors murmured agreement. Cadian looked at Avina, really looked at her, and she saw 1,000 emotions flicker across his face. Confusion, denial, anger, and beneath it all,
Fear.
I don't want this, Avina whispered. I never asked for. I can't. Neither did I, Cadian said quietly. Their eyes met. Two broken people, thrust together by a prophecy neither of them believed in. And, between them, a little girl who'd spoken for the first time in 2 years, who refused to let go. Lioness' small voice rose again, soft but certain. Please stay, she whispered, looking between Avina and her father. Please. I've been so alone. And you, her gaze fixed on Avina. You're supposed to be here. I know you are. Avina's chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. How do I say no to this? How do I walk away from a child who's looking at me like I'm her salvation? But she wasn't anyone's salvation. She was broken. I need. Avina's voice cracked. I need to think. I need. You'll stay. Cadian's voice was iron again. Not cruel. Just final. Until we understand what this means. What he looked at his daughter, and something in his expression shattered. What she needs. And if I refuse? Avina whispered. Cadian's silver eyes met hers. You won't, because he'd seen it too. The way she'd instinctively held Lioness. The way she couldn't make herself pull away. Avina closed her eyes. What have I gotten myself into? And Lioness, still wrapped around her, whispered one more time. Thank you for coming, Mom. I knew you would. Something was wrong with her body. No, not wrong. Different. Avina noticed it the morning after Lioness spoke. She woke with warmth spreading through her chest, not painful, but present. Like someone had lit a candle behind her ribs and the heat was slowly radiating outward. She pressed her hand to her sternum, confused. No fever. No injury. Just warmth. And something else. Energy. For 3 days, she'd been exhausted, drained by the crash, the fear, the emotional devastation of everything with Zayden. Moving had felt like dragging herself through mud.
But now?
Now she felt alive. Her senses sharpened. The crackle of the fireplace sounded clearer. The scent of pine and snow and something wild, wolf, filled her lungs with startling clarity. She could hear voices in the hallway she shouldn't be able to hear. Could sense movement beyond her door. What is happening to me? A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called, her voice stronger than it had been in days. The door opened to reveal Lioness, already dressed in a simple gray dress, her dark hair braided. Behind her stood a stern-faced attendant who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. But Lioness' face lit up when she saw Avina. You're still here, the little girl breathed, relief flooding her features. Avina's heart clenched. I'm still here, sweetheart. Lioness crossed the room in seconds, climbing onto the bed without hesitation and tucking herself against Avina's side like she belonged there. Like she'd been doing it her whole life. The attendant shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. The alpha said, "Tell the alpha his daughter is fine," Avina said quietly, surprised by the authority in her own voice. The attendant's eyes widened slightly. Then, impossibly, she bowed and left. Avina stared at the closed door. "What just happened?" "You smell better today," Lina said matter-of-factly, snuggling closer. "Less sad. More like home." "I'm not sure that's possible," Avina murmured, stroking the child's hair. "I've never really had a home." "You do now." Lina looked up at her with absolute certainty.
Here.
"With us. With Papa and me."
Papa. Cadian.
The alpha, who'd made it painfully clear he wanted nothing to do with her, who looked at her like she was a complication he couldn't afford, who'd avoided her completely since the night Lioness spoke. As if summoned by her thoughts, the door opened again, and Cadian Voss filled the doorway. He'd clearly just come from training. Sweat dampened his dark hair. His shirt clung to the hard planes of his chest and shoulders. A fresh cut marked his jaw. His silver eyes found Lina first, relief flashing across his face. Then they moved to Avina, and something shifted. The warmth in Avina's chest flared, hot and sudden and completely overwhelming. She gasped softly, her hand flying to her sternum. Cadian's entire body went rigid. His nostrils flared. His eyes darkened from silver to something molten and dangerous. He felt it too. "Lina," Cadian's voice came out rough. "Go with Mira. Breakfast." "But..."
Now.
The command in his voice left no room for argument. Lina hesitated, looking between them with eyes too knowing for a child her age. Then she pressed a quick kiss to Avina's cheek and slipped from the room.
The door closed,
leaving Avina alone with an alpha who looked at her like she was something dangerous. "What was that?" Avina whispered. "I don't know." Cadian hadn't moved from the doorway, like he was physically restraining himself from coming closer. "But it needs to stop. I'm not doing anything." "Your scent changed." His voice was tight.
Controlled.
"Overnight. It's stronger."
Clearer.
Avina's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Cadian's jaw clenched. "The elders think you're an echo." Echo. The word hung between them like a blade. Avina had heard whispers of echoes. Humans born with latent wolf essence, not enough to shift, but enough to bond with powerful alphas. To amplify their strength. Stabilize their packs. They were rare. And, according to legend, extremely dangerous to possess. "That's impossible," Avina said. "I'm just human. I've never." "You calm my wolf." The words stopped her cold. Cadian finally moved, stepping into the room, but keeping careful distance. His eyes never left hers. "Last night," he continued quietly, "my wolf was fractured. Violent. It's been that way since." He stopped himself. "For 2 years. Nothing helps. No meditation, no running, no fighting. Just constant rage." His hands flexed at his sides. "But when Lina touched you, when you held her..." His voice dropped. "My wolf went quiet. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe." Avina's heart hammered. "I didn't do anything." "You didn't have to." Cadian's gaze was intense enough to burn. "Echoes don't do. They just are. Their presence affects everything around them, especially there." He cut himself off, but Avina heard the unspoken word.
Mate.
"No," she whispered. "No, we're not." "I know." Cadian's voice was hard. "Final. And we won't be." The rejection shouldn't have hurt. She didn't even want this. But something in her chest ached at his words. "The bond is forming anyway," Cadian continued, his tone clinical. "I can feel it. Every time you're near, my wolf." He stopped. Breathed. "It doesn't matter what we want. If you're truly an echo, the bond will continue to strengthen until..." "Until what?" "Until it's complete." His eyes were bleak. "Or until one of us dies." The next 3 days were torture. Cadian tried to keep his distance, but the stronghold forced them together. Pack disputes that had simmered for weeks suddenly needed Avina's presence to resolve. Warriors who'd been ready to tear each other apart went calm when she entered the room. She didn't understand it. I didn't want it, but she couldn't deny it was happening. And Cadian was being drawn to her like gravity. She'd turn a corner and find him there. Walk into a room and feel his eyes on her. Sit with Lyanna and hear his footsteps in the hallway, pacing, unable to stay away. The tension was unbearable. Every time their eyes met, heat flared between them. Unwanted, undeniable, magnetic. She'd catch him staring at her mouth. He'd catch her watching the way he moved. Neither of them acknowledged it, but the pack noticed. The bond is strengthening, she heard an elder whisper to another. See how the alpha orbits her? How does his wolf settle in her presence? It's been decades since a true echo bonding. If word spreads, it already has. Avina's blood ran cold. That night, she was summoned to the elder's chamber. The same white-haired woman from before sat surrounded by ancient texts and bones carved with symbols Avina didn't recognize. Sit, child. Avina sat. The elder studied her with those cloudy, all-seeing eyes. You feel it, don't you? The changes. Avina nodded mutely. The echo bond is awakening because you've found your true mate. The elder's voice was gentle but firm. Your body recognizes him, even if your mind resists. You're becoming what you were always meant to be. I don't want this, Avina whispered. Few do, at first. The elder reached out, touched Avina's hand. But you must understand, if you are truly an echo, you are now in grave danger. Avina's throat tightened. Why? Because other packs will want you. Alphas who would use your power to strengthen their own lines. Rogues who would sell you to the highest bidder. The elder's grip tightened. And enemies who would kill you simply to weaken Cadian. Oh God. The prophecy is already spreading across the territories, the elder continued. Silverfang's alpha has found his echo. That a soul sight child has spoken. Others will come. Then I'll leave, Avina said desperately. I'll go somewhere they can't. You can't. The elder's voice was sad. The bond has begun. Separating from your mate now would drive you both mad. Possibly kill you. Avina's world tilted.
Trapped.
Again. Always trapped. What do I do? She whispered. The elder looked at her for a long moment. You survive, child. You learn to fight. And you decide. Her eyes gleamed. Whether you'll run from destiny or become it. That night, Avina couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her room, staring out at the snow-covered mountains, feeling the warmth in her chest pulse with every heartbeat. A knock at the door. She knew who it was before she turned. Cadian stood in the doorway, backlit by torchlight, his expression unreadable. Can't sleep either? She asked quietly. My wolf won't settle. His voice was rough. Not unless. He stopped. But she knew. Not unless I'm near you. They stared at each other across the room. And for the first time, neither of them looked away. The bond hummed between them. Dangerous, undeniable, inevitable. This is a mistake, Cadian said. I know, Avina whispered. Neither of them moved. The air crackled with tension. And somewhere in the distance, a howl rose. Warning.
Threat.
They're coming. The howl shattered the night. Not the usual patrol call. This was urgent. Warning. Threat detected. Cadian's head snapped toward the window, his entire body going predator still. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. What's happening? Intruders. His voice was ice. Multiple scents. Organized. He was gone before Avina could respond, the door slamming behind him. The warmth in her chest turned to burning. She gasped, doubling over as sensation flooded through her. Not pain, but awareness. She could feel Cadian moving through the stronghold. Feel his wolf rising. Feel the surge of protective fury that made her own blood sing with adrenaline she shouldn't possess.
What is happening to me?
More howls joined the first. Then screams. The clash of steel. Snarls that made her bones vibrate. They're under attack. Avina's hands shook as she moved toward the door. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, To stay safe. To Lyanna. The thought hit her like lightning. Where is Lyanna? The bond in her chest pulled, sharp and insistent, pointing her toward the child like a compass. Avina threw open the door and ran. The stronghold was chaos. Warriors rushed past her in wolf form, massive, lethal, moving with coordinated precision. The scent of blood hit her nose.
Smoke.
Something acrid and wrong. Poison. She heard it in a warrior's shouted warning. They're using wolfsbane arrows. Avina's heart seized. Wolfsbane would slow the wolves. Weaken them. Make them vulnerable. She rounded a corner. And froze. 3 rogues stood in the hallway ahead, dragging a struggling, terrified Lyanna between them. The little girl's eyes found Avina's. "MOM." The scream tore from Lyanna's throat, raw, desperate, breaking. And something in Avina snapped. The warmth in her chest exploded. She didn't think so.
Didn't hesitate.
She ran. "Let her go." Avina's voice came out as a command, deep, resonant, carrying power she'd never possessed. The rogues startled. One of them laughed. "Look, boys. The little human wants to play." Avina grabbed a torch from the wall and swung. Fire met fur. The rogue screamed, stumbling back.
She didn't stop.
I didn't think. Just fought like something feral had awakened inside her. All instinct, no fear. Pure maternal fury. She got between Lyanna and the rogues, the torch blazing in her hands, her voice ringing out. Touch her and die. And she meant it. The bond in her chest roared. The rogues hesitated. Then a shadow descended. Cadian hit them like an avalanche. His wolf was massive, black as midnight, eyes blazing silver white, jaws closing around the nearest rogue's throat with lethal efficiency. Blood sprayed. The other rogues scattered. Cadian pursued one. But the third lunged for Avina. She swung the torch again, but he was faster, claws raking across her arm. Pain exploded. She cried out, and Cadian's wolf roared. The sound shook the stone walls. He abandoned his prey and was on her attacker in seconds, tearing him apart with a savagery that should have terrified her. It didn't, because Lyanna was safe. The little girl crashed into Avina's legs, sobbing. Avina dropped the torch and wrapped her uninjured arm around the child, pulling her close, whispering, "I've got you. I've got you. You're safe." Cadian shifted back to human form, naked, blood-covered, chest heaving. His eyes found the wound on Avina's arm. Something feral flickered across his face. "You're hurt." "I'm fine. You're bleeding." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, gripping her wounded arm with surprising gentleness. "You should have stayed in your room. You should have." "They had Lyanna," Avina said simply. Cadian's jaw clenched. His eyes met hers. And for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw something other than cold distance. She saw gratitude.
Fear.
Possession. "You could have died," he said roughly. "So could she. You're human. I don't care." Avina's voice didn't waver. "I won't let anyone hurt her." Lyanna whimpered against her side. Cadian looked at his daughter, then at Avina holding her, and something in his expression broke. "We need to move," he said quietly.
Now.
"There will be more." They gathered in the war room. Avina's arm had been bandaged. Lyanna refused to leave her side. And Cadian stood at the head of the table, now dressed, his face carved from stone as his commanders reported. 17 rogues total, all dead or captured. They were specifically targeting the child's wing. And they knew the guard rotations. Someone gave them information. Cadian's eyes darkened. A spy. Silence fell like a blade. "There's more, Alpha." The scarred warrior from before stepped forward. "We interrogated one before he died. He said they were sent by the Ashcroft pack." Avina's blood turned to ice. Ashcroft. Zayden's mother's maiden name. "They were hired to retrieve the echo," the warrior continued. "Alive. The bounty is," he hesitated, "substantial." "How much?" Cadian's voice was deadly quiet. 50,000 gold marks. Gasps rippled through the room. Avina felt the floor tilt beneath her. 50,000. For her. They'll send armies for that price, someone whispered. Every rogue in the territories will come. We can't protect her. Enough. Cadian's voice cracked like a whip. Silence. He looked at each warrior in turn. Avina Rail is under Silverfang protection. Anyone who wants her goes through me. Through us. His eyes blazed. And I promise you, they will bleed for trying. The warriors straightened. Nodded.
Believed.
Cadian's gaze finally landed on Avina. You're not leaving this stronghold. Not until we eliminate the threat. I can't stay here forever. You will stay as long as it takes. His tone left no room for argument. You saved my daughter tonight. I will keep you alive. Even if you fight me every step of the way. Their eyes locked. The bond between them hummed, hot, insistent, undeniable. And Avina realized she wasn't running anymore. She was fighting. Later that night, Lina finally fell asleep. Curled in Avina's bed, small fingers clutching Avina's uninjured hand. Avina sat beside her, stroking the child's hair, her mind racing. A soft knock. Cadian entered without waiting for permission.
He looked exhausted.
The mask had slipped. Is she asleep? He asked quietly. Yes. He moved closer, stopping at the foot of the bed, staring at his daughter with an expression so tender it made Avina's chest ache. Thank you, he said finally, for protecting her. You don't have to thank me. I do. His eyes met hers. You could have died tonight. You're human. You have no wolf, no training, no. I have her, Avina interrupted softly. And apparently that's enough. Cadian's throat worked. The bond is getting stronger, isn't it? She asked.
He didn't deny it.
Yes. What happens when it's complete? Silence stretched between them. Then, I don't know, Cadian admitted. I've never wanted a mate. Never wanted to risk, he stopped. But it doesn't matter what I want. The bond doesn't care. Neither of us asked for this, Avina whispered.
No.
His voice was rough. We didn't. He looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, so slowly, he reached out and touched her cheek. The same way Lina had, days ago. The bond sang. Heat flooded Avina's body. Her breath caught. Her heart hammered. Cadian's pupils dilated, his hand trembling slightly against her skin. This is dangerous, he murmured. I know, she breathed. Neither of them pulled away. The air between them crackled. And then, Cadian stepped back, dropped his hand. Get some rest, he said roughly. Tomorrow, we prepare for war. He left before she could respond. But the warmth of his touch lingered. And Avina knew everything had changed. Lina's screams woke the entire stronghold. Avina bolted upright in bed, heart hammering, disoriented in the pre-dawn darkness. The sound came from the room next door, the chamber they'd moved Lina to after the attack, with guards posted outside and Avina sleeping within earshot. She was through the door before the guards could react. Lina thrashed in her bed, tangled in sheets, her small face twisted in terror, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, no, blood mama, no. Lina. Avina gathered the child into her arms, holding her tight. Sweetheart, I'm here. You're safe. It's just a dream. Not a dream. Lina sobbed against her chest. I saw it. I see it every night. The claws. The blood. Mama screaming. The door crashed open. Cadian stood there, barefoot and shirtless, his eyes wild with panic and something else. Grief. Raw and devastating. His gaze locked on his daughter, and his entire body seemed to crack. Lina, his voice broke. But Lina was already scrambling out of Avina's arms, running to a small desk in the corner where parchment and charcoal lay scattered. Her hands moved frantically, drawing with the desperate intensity of someone trying to exorcise demons. Baby, stop. Cadian moved toward her. You don't have to. I have to show her. Lina's voice was ragged. She needs to see. She needs to know before they. She shoved the drawing toward Avina. Avina's hands trembled as she took it, and her blood turned to ice. The drawing was crude but detailed in the way only trauma could make something detailed. A woman lying on the floor, beautiful, with long dark hair spread around her like a halo, blood pooling beneath her, and standing over her, a wolf, but not a normal wolf. This one had black claws, elongated,
Wrong.
like they'd been dipped in poison, or painted with death. She drew this. Avina whispered, looking up at Cadian. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes were haunted. She's been drawing them for 2 years, he said quietly. The healer said it was her way of processing the trauma, that she didn't actually remember, that it was just. It's not just nightmares, Avina said, studying the drawing with growing horror. She witnessed it, didn't she? Cadian's silence was answer enough. Lina pulled out more drawings, a whole stack of them, hidden beneath her mattress, each one more disturbing than the last. The woman was crying. The black-clawed wolf approaches. Blood splattered on walls. A small child hiding in a wardrobe, hands over her mouth. Oh God. Avina's throat closed. Lina saw her mother murdered, she breathed. Yes. Cadian's voice was barely above a whisper. And the killer was never found. His hands clenched into fists. Because whoever did it was smart. They covered their tracks. Made it look like a rogue attack. But I knew it was someone inside the pack. Avina's gaze snapped to his. Inside. My mate, Alara. She wasn't killed by rogues. Cadian's eyes blazed with barely contained fury. She was assassinated. By someone who knew the stronghold layout. Who knew when the guards changed shifts. Who knew exactly where she'd be that night. The room felt like it was closing in. You think there's a traitor, Avina said slowly. I know there is. Cadian's voice was deadly. I've spent 2 years trying to find them. Watching. Waiting. But they're careful. Patient. He looked at Lina, who was curled in the corner now, rocking slightly, clutching a new drawing to her chest. And they traumatized my daughter so deeply she couldn't speak for 2 years. Avina's heart broke. She crossed to Lina, kneeling beside her. Can I see, sweetheart? She asked gently. Lina hesitated, then handed over the drawing. This one was different. It showed the black-clawed wolf again. But this time, there was something around its neck. A collar, with a symbol Avina didn't recognize, 3 slashes through a crescent moon. Do you know what this means? Avina asked, holding up the drawing to Cadian. His face went absolutely white. That's the mark of the inner circle, he said hoarsely. What's the inner circle? My father's personal guard. Cadian's voice was hollow. The most loyal, most trusted wolves in Silverfang. They're the only ones allowed to wear that mark. The implications hit like a freight train. The killer is one of your father's guards, Avina whispered. Was. Cadian's eyes were bleak. My father died 3 months after Alara. The inner circle disbanded. They're scattered now, some retired, some serving in other positions, some. He stopped, looked at Avina with dawning horror. Some still live in this stronghold. The bond in Avina's chest had been growing stronger every day. But that morning, something shifted. She felt it the moment she walked into the dining hall for breakfast, a wash of emotion that wasn't hers.
Fear. Anxiety. Guilt.
It hit her like a wave, so strong she stumbled. Cadian was beside her instantly, his hand on her elbow. What's wrong? I don't. Avina pressed her hand to her chest, trying to breathe through the onslaught. I can feel something. Like emotions that aren't mine. Cadian's eyes sharpened. The echo bond, he said quietly. It's strengthening your gifts. You're becoming an empath. I don't want to be an empath. Too late. His voice was grim. What are you feeling? Avina scanned the room. Dozens of wolves sat at long tables, eating, talking, laughing. But underneath the normalcy, terror. She turned slowly, following the sensation like a thread. And her eyes landed on a wolf sitting alone in the corner. Older.
Scarred.
Gray streaking his dark hair. He was staring at his plate, hands trembling slightly. The guilt rolling off him was suffocating. Him, Avina whispered. That man. Something's wrong with him. Cadian followed her gaze. His entire body went rigid. Torin, he breathed. He was part of the inner circle. They didn't confront him immediately. Cadian was too smart for that. Instead, they watched. And what Avina sensed over the next 2 days made her sick. Torin was afraid, constantly looking over his shoulder, flinching at shadows, meeting in whispered conversations with wolves Avina didn't recognize. He's reporting to someone, Cadian said grimly on the 3rd night. Someone outside the stronghold. They were in his study, a room filled with maps, weapons, and the lingering scent of leather and snow. Avina sat across from him, her new empathic senses exhausted from constant vigilance. We need to make him reveal himself, she said.
How?
Avina met his eyes. Use me as bait.
No.
Cadian's response was immediate. Absolute. Cadian. I said no. He stood, pacing like a caged wolf. You're already a target. Every rogue and mercenary in the territories wants you. I'm not putting you in more danger. I'm already in danger. Avina shot back, standing to face him. And if we don't find out who killed Alara, if we don't stop whoever's feeding information to your enemies, Lyanna will never be safe. You'll never be safe. Cadian's jaw clenched. I can't lose you. The words hung between them. Quiet. Devastating. Avina's breath caught. You barely know me, she whispered. The bond knows you. His voice was rough. My wolf knows you. And Lyanna, he stopped. Breathed. Lyanna chose you. That's enough. The warmth in Avina's chest blazed. She took a step toward him. Then another. Until they were inches apart. Then trust me, she said quietly. Let me help you catch the person who destroyed your family. Cadian stared down at her, war raging in his silver eyes. Finally, if anything happens to you, it won't. I will burn this world down. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The plan was simple. Avina would take an evening walk through the gardens, alone, vulnerable, while Cadian and his most trusted warriors watched from the shadows, waiting for someone to make a move. The sun set early this time of year, plunging the stronghold into blue-shadowed twilight. Avina wrapped her cloak tighter against the cold, following the snow-covered path through the winter garden. Her heart hammered. Every shadow looked like a threat. But she kept walking, kept trusting that Cadian was watching. She reached the fountain at the garden center, frozen solid, icicles hanging like crystal teeth. And that's when she felt it. Presence. Someone behind her. She turned slowly. Torin stood there, holding a small vial. His face was twisted with anguish. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. But they have my daughter. They'll kill her if I don't. He lunged. Avina dodged barely. The vial shattered against the fountain, liquid hissing as it ate through stone. Poison. Shadows erupted from the trees. Cadian hit Torin like a battering ram, slamming him to the ground, claws extending, eyes blazing with murderous fury. Who sent you? Cadian roared. Please, Torin sobbed. Please, they have my little girl. Who? Warriors surrounded them now, weapons drawn. Torin's resistance crumbled. Ashcroft, he gasped. Beta Zayden Ashcroft. He's been paying me for 2 years. Said if I didn't help him, he'd kill my daughter. Said he needs the echo. That she's the key to. His words cut off. His eyes went wide. And he collapsed, blood trickling from his mouth. Poison. Hidden in a false tooth. Dead before he hit the ground. Cadian snarled in frustration, but Avina's mind was reeling. Zayden. Her ex. The man who'd rejected her. He was behind all of this? The Christmas Eve moon, one of the elders said quietly, emerging from the shadows. It's in 3 days. The prophecy says the echo bond must be completed before then, or it will shatter, leaving both mates vulnerable. Cadian's eyes found Avina's. He's going to attack before then, he said grimly. He's going to try to take you. Or kill us both. Avina's hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Then we finish this, she said. On Christmas Eve. We end him. Cadian's expression was fierce.
Proud.
Together, he said. And for the first time, Avina believed they might actually survive this. Christmas Eve arrived with deceptive beauty. Snow fell in soft, silent curtains over Silver Fong's stronghold. Evergreen garlands wound through the stone corridors, their scent mixing with cinnamon and wood smoke. Candles flickered in every window, casting warm golden light across the winter darkness. It looked like peace. It felt like the calm before a storm. Avina stood at her window, watching the pack gather in the great hall below. Wolves in their finest clothes, leather and fur and winter silks, laughing, embracing, celebrating the holiday with a fierce joy that came from surviving another brutal year. Music drifted up, drums and strings and voices raised in ancient songs. It was beautiful, and it was all a trap, because they knew Xaden was coming. The question wasn't if, only when. You don't have to do this. Avina turned to find Cadian in the doorway, dressed in ceremonial black leather, silver clasps gleaming at his shoulders. He looked every inch the alpha, powerful, commanding, lethal. But his eyes were soft when they looked at her. Something had shifted between them over the past 3 days. The bond had grown so strong that being apart physically hurt. They'd stopped fighting it. Stopped pretending. He'd held her last night when the nightmares came. She'd steadied his wolf when the rage threatened to consume him. They were becoming one. And tonight would either complete the bond or destroy them both. Yes, I do, Avina said quietly. She wore a dress the pack seamstress had made for her, deep crimson, simple but elegant, with silver embroidery along the hem. Lina needs to see that we're not afraid. That Christmas can still be beautiful, even when we're expecting an attack. Especially then. She crossed to him, placed her hand over his heart. We survive. We fight. And we celebrate. Because that's what it means to be alive. Cadian's hand covered hers. The bond between them hummed. If anything happens to you tonight, he started. It won't, she interrupted. Because you'll be there. And I'll be there. And we're stronger together. His silver eyes searched hers. Then he leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her.
Soft.
Devastating. The bond ignited. Heat flooded through Avina's entire body. Her fingers curled into his leather vest. Her breath caught. The world narrowed to just this, his mouth on hers, his hand cradling her face, the feeling of coming home after being lost for so long. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. After tonight, Cadian whispered against her lips, I'm making this bond permanent. No more hesitation. No more fear. You're mine, Avina Rail. And you're mine, she breathed. His smile was fierce. Feral.
Perfect.
Come, he said, taking her hand. Let's give them a Christmas to remember. The great hall was magnificent. A massive evergreen tree stood in the center, decorated with carved wooden ornaments, dried berries, and candles that cast dancing light across hundreds of faces. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted meats, spiced wines, honeyed fruits, and desserts that smelled like childhood memories Avina had never had. The children laughed. Warriors embraced. The elders told stories. And Lina wore a white dress with silver ribbons braided through her dark hair, and when she saw Avina enter, her entire face lit up. Mom, she ran across the hall, crashing into Avina's arms. You look like a princess. Avina's heart swelled. So, do you, sweetheart? Lina beamed up at her father. Can we dance? Please? All 3 of us. Cadian's expression softened in a way Avina had rarely seen. Of course, little wolf. And for one perfect moment, they were family, dancing together beneath the Christmas tree, Lina giggling between them, the pack watching with expressions ranging from joy to awe to something that looked like hope. Avina let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe this could be real. Maybe she belonged here. That maybe. The explosion shattered the night. The eastern wall erupted in flames and stone. Screams tore through the hall. The music died, and through the smoking gap in the wall poured rogues.
Dozens of them.
No, hundreds. Organized.
Armed.
Led by wolves in dark armor that gleamed like oil. Shield the children. Cadian's roar cut through the chaos. Warriors shifted instantly, massive wolves erupting from human skin, forming a protective barrier around the youngest pack members. But the rogues weren't attacking randomly. They were moving with purpose. Straight toward Lyanna. Avina's scream ripped from her throat as she saw 3 rogues break through the defensive line, heading directly for the little girl.
She ran.
I didn't think so.
Didn't hesitate.
Just threw herself between the rogues and Lyanna, her body the only shield she had. Claws raked across her shoulder. Pain exploded. She felt blood, hot and wet, but she didn't move. Get away from her. Avina snarled, and her voice came out wrong. Deeper, resonating with power she didn't understand. One of the rogues hesitated. Then Cadian was there. His wolf was a black nightmare, all fangs and fury and death. He tore through the rogues like they were made of paper, his snarls shaking the very foundations of the hall. But more kept coming. Too many. We need to get Lyanna to the safe room. Avina shouted over the chaos. Cadian shifted back, blood streaking his face, his chest heaving. Go.
I'll.
A figure stepped through the smoke.
Tall.
Broad-shouldered, golden eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. Xaden. Avina's blood turned to ice. He looked exactly as she remembered. Handsome, controlled. Every inch the future beta. Except now she could see what she'd been too blind to see before. The cruelty in his smile. The ambition burning in his eyes. The complete lack of anything resembling a soul. Hello, Avina, Xaden said pleasantly, like they were meeting for tea. You've been hard to find. You did this. Her voice shook with rage. You killed Alara? You've been hunting me? You organized this massacre. I did what was necessary. Xaden's expression didn't change. Silverfang was becoming too powerful. The echo bonding with their alpha would have made them unstoppable. I couldn't allow that. So you killed an innocent woman. Cadian's voice was deadly. Traumatized a child. Sent assassins after a human who'd done nothing to you. She's not just human anymore, though, is she? Xaden's eyes gleamed. I can smell the change. The bond is almost complete. Which means he moved fast. Faster than Avina could track. One moment, he was across the hall. The next, he had Lyanna in his grip, a blade pressed to her small throat. I need to finish this before the moon sets. No. Avina's scream tore from her soul. Lyanna's terrified eyes found hers. Amon. The word shattered something in Avina's chest. The bond exploded.
Heat. Power.
Something ancient rising up inside her like a tidal wave. She took a step toward Xaden. Cadian lunged. And Xaden moved like lightning. The blade in his other hand, coated in something dark and viscous. Wolfsbane. He drove it into Cadian's side. No. Avina's scream echoed as Cadian collapsed, his body convulsing, silver eyes rolling back. The poison was working fast. Too fast. Lethal dose. Xaden dropped Lyanna, who scrambled toward Avina, sobbing, and turned his attention fully to Avina. You should have stayed weak, he said, stalking toward her. Should have stayed broken. I could have used you then. Controlled you. But now you're becoming something dangerous. He grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off her feet. So, I'll just take your power the old-fashioned way. His claws extended, aimed for her heart. This is it. This is how I die. But then, Lyanna's small hand gripped Avina's, and the child's voice rang out, clear and powerful. You can't have her. She's ours. The bond in Avina's chest detonated.
Light.
Blinding, silver-white light. It exploded outward from her body like a shockwave, slamming into every rogue in the hall. They flew, crashing into walls, through windows, across the blood-slicked floor. Xaden screamed, his grip releasing, his body hurled backward like a rag doll. Avina collapsed to her knees beside Cadian. No, no, no. Her hands pressed against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Don't leave me.
Please.
Acadian, please. His eyes fluttered open.
Silver.
Glowing. Avina, his voice was weak. Fading. The bond completed. I don't know how. Yes, you do. His hand found hers, pressed it over his heart, and Avina understood. She closed her eyes, reached for the warmth in her chest, the bond that had been growing since the moment Lyanna first spoke. And she let go, stopped fighting, stopped fearing, just accepted. I choose you, Cadian Voss. I choose this bond. I choose this pack. I choose us. The words resonated through the hall, through the very air itself, and the bond fused.
Complete. Permanent.
Unbreakable. Power surged through both of them, silver light wrapping around their bodies like living flame. Cadian's eyes blazed. The wolfsbane poison burned away. His wounds began to heal. He rose, slowly, impossibly, glowing like a god of winter and war. And when he looked at Xaden, death looked back. You made a mistake, Cadian said quietly. You threatened my mate, my daughter, my pack. He shifted. But this wasn't his normal wolf. This was something else. Massive. Silver white. Eyes blazing like stars. Alpha Prime. The bond had awakened his true form. Xaden's face went white. He tried to run. Cadian was faster. The battle was brutal. But it was never really a contest. Cadian tore through Xaden's defenses like they were nothing, his jaws closing around the traitor's throat, his claws. Silver. Blessed by the bond. Ripping through flesh and bone. Xaden's final scream echoed through the hall. Then, silence. When the smoke cleared, the rogues were dead or fleeing. The pack stood victorious, bloodied but alive. And, in the center of the hall, Acadian knelt beside Avina and Lyanna, pulling them both into his arms. It's over, he whispered. It's finally over. Lyanna sobbed against his chest. Avina's hands shook as she held them both. The bond between her and Cadian pulsed, steady, strong, complete. Around them, the pack began to sing. An ancient song. A victory song. And outside, snow continued to fall. Silent. Beautiful. Christmas Eve. The night, everything changed. The stronghold was quiet. Too quiet. Dawn broke over snow-covered mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose gold and lavender. The great hall, once filled with music and laughter and then screams and blood, now stood in solemn silence. Healers moved among the wounded. Warriors carried away the dead, both rogue and pack members alike. The cost of victory lay heavy in the air. Avina sat in a corner, her crimson dress torn and stained, her hands wrapped in bandages. The wound on her shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, but she barely felt it. All she could feel was the bond.
Complete now. Permanent.
Thrumming through her chest like a second heartbeat. And on the other side of that bond,
Pain.
Cadian sat 20 feet away, stripped to the waist while healers worked on the deep gash Xaden's wolfsbane blade had left. The poison was gone, burned away when the bond completed, but the wound itself was taking longer to heal. He'd lost too much blood, pushed himself too hard, nearly died. Because of her. This is my fault. The thought had been circling her mind for hours, growing louder with each passing minute. If I hadn't come here, Xaden never would have attacked. If I hadn't crashed on that road, Cadian would never have found me. If I had just stayed away, Alara would still be alive. Lyanna wouldn't have trauma carved so deep into her soul. The pack wouldn't have lost to the warriors tonight. Cadian wouldn't be bleeding. Stop. The word cut through her spiral. Avina looked up to find Cadian watching her, his silver eyes knowing despite the exhaustion etched into his face. I can feel what you're thinking, he said quietly. Through the bond. And you're wrong. You almost died. I've almost died 100 times. He dismissed the healers with a wave of his hand, rising slowly despite their protests. That's what it means to be alpha. To protect your pack. To fight. He crossed the distance between them, moving carefully, and lowered himself to sit beside her. Close enough that their shoulders touched. Close enough that the bond sang. None of this is your fault, Avina, Kadian said firmly. Zayden made his choices long before you crashed on that mountain road. He killed Alara because she discovered his treachery. He hunted you because he's a power-hungry bastard who wanted to use you. And he attacked tonight because he's afraid of what we're becoming together. And what are we becoming? Avina whispered. Kadian's hand found hers. Something he could never destroy. The warmth of his touch spread through her like sunlight. But the guilt remained. Heavy. Suffocating. I should leave, she said quietly. Before more people get hurt because of me. Before. Don't. The word came out harsh. Almost desperate. Kadian's grip on her hand tightened. Don't even think it, he continued, his voice rough. You leave. The bond will tear us both apart. You know that. Then we break it. We can't. His eyes blazed. It's complete, Avina.
Permanent.
The only way to break it now is death. So, unless you want to kill us both. Maybe that would be better. The words burst from her before she could stop them. Maybe everyone would be safer if I just... She couldn't finish. Because Kadian's hands were suddenly framing her face, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me, he said, his voice low and fierce. You are not a burden. You are not a curse. You are the woman who saved my daughter. Who brought light back into this stronghold. Who made me believe I could be more than just a weapon. His thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You are my mate, Avina Rail. And I will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. Kadian. I love you. The words stopped her heart. I love you. Simple. Devastating. True. You can't, she whispered. You barely know me. I know you fought 3 rogues with your bare hands to protect Lyanna. That was just. I know you stayed when every instinct told you to run. Because I had nowhere else. I know you completed our bond even though you were terrified, Kadian continued, his voice gentling. Because you're brave. Because you're selfless. Because despite everything that bastard Zayden did to you, despite every reason you have to hate wolves and packs and alphas. He leaned his forehead against hers. You chose us. Avina's breath hitched. I don't know how to be what you need, she admitted. I'm not a Luna. I don't know pack law or traditions or how to. I don't need a perfect Luna, Kadian said. I just need you. Messy.
Stubborn.
Human. His lips curved into a soft smile. With a tendency to throw yourself into danger without thinking. Despite everything, Avina felt herself smile back. That's a terrible quality in a mate. Terrible, he agreed. And also exactly what I need. The bond between them pulsed. Warm, steady, right? Stay, Kadian whispered. Not because the bond demands it. Not because Lyanna needs you, though she does. Not because the pack expects it. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Stay because I'm asking. Because I chose you, Avina Rail. Not as an echo. Not as a prophesied Luna. As the woman who makes me want to be better. Who makes me believe in second chances. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Stay because I love you. And I hope you might feel the same. Avina's heart was breaking and healing at the same time. Do I love him? She thought about the past weeks. The way he'd protected her, without asking for anything in return. The way he looked at Lyanna with such fierce, devastating love. The way his control would slip just for a moment, and she'd see the man beneath the alpha, broken, grieving, trying. The way he'd held her through nightmares. The way he'd fought beside her tonight. The way he was looking at her right now like she was everything. Yes, she whispered. Kadian went very still. Yes. I love you too. The words came easier than she expected. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you saved me on that mountain road. Maybe when I saw you with Lyanna. Maybe when you looked at me like I was worth protecting even though I'm just. Everything, Kadian interrupted. You're everything, Avina. And then he kissed her. Soft at first. Then deeper.
Claiming.
The bond between them blazed to life, flooding both of them with heat and light and a certainty that went beyond words. This is home. This is right. This is forever. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, hands intertwined. Is that a yes? Cadian asked, a hint of his rare smile playing at his lips. You'll stay? I'll stay, Avina whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The pack gathered as the sun fully rose. Despite exhaustion, despite wounds, despite the losses they'd suffered, they came. Because this was important. This was sacred. Cadian stood in the center of the great hall, cleaned, bandaged, dressed in formal black and silver. His alpha presence filled the space, commanding without effort. Beside him stood Avina, no longer in the torn crimson dress, but in something the pack seamstress had created overnight, a gown of midnight blue with silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. Simple, elegant, regal. She looked like Luna, even if she didn't feel like one yet. Lioness stood between them, holding both their hands, her small face serious and proud. The pack elders stepped forward, the white-haired woman who'd first explained the prophecy, along with 3 others who carried the weight of centuries in their eyes. Alpha Cadian Voss, the eldest said, her voice carrying through the hall. Do you claim this woman as your true mate? Your chosen Luna? Your partner in all things? I do. Cadian's voice rang clear. With my whole heart, my whole soul, my whole pack. The elder turned to Avina. Avina Rail, do you accept this bond? This pack? This life, with all its dangers, all its responsibilities, all its love. Avina's throat tightened. Every eye in the hall was on her. Hundreds of wolves, warriors, families, children, all waiting for her answer. She looked at Cadian, at the man who'd saved her, protected her, chosen her, then down at Lyanna, at the little girl who'd called her mom and meant it, then out at the pack, at the wolves who'd fought beside her last night, who'd bled to protect her. Family, not by blood,
By choice.
I do, Avina said, her voice steady and sure. I accept this bond, this pack, this life. She looked at Cadian, her heart so full it hurt. I accept you. The elder smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her stern expression. Then by the authority of the old laws and the blessing of the moon. She pressed her hands to both their heads. I recognize this bond, this union, this family. Power rippled through the hall, ancient, primal, binding. The bond between Avina and Cadian flared so bright she gasped. And then,
Changed.
no longer just a connection. Now it was a fusion. She could feel Cadian's wolf like it was part of her own soul. Could sense the pack's collective presence like a warm net surrounding her. Could feel belonging in a way she'd never experienced before. All hail Luna Avina, the elder's voice rang out. And the pack.
Knelt.
Every single wolf. Warriors who'd fought in 100 battles. Elders who'd seen generations pass. Children who barely understood what was happening. All of them kneeling. For her. Avina's eyes burned with tears. Cadian squeezed her hand, his own eyes bright with emotion. Welcome home, he whispered. And then, a small tug on her dress. Avina looked down to find Lyanna gazing up at her, tears streaming down her small face, but smiling. So beautifully, radiantly smiling. The little girl reached up, just like she had that first night, and touched Avina's cheek with gentle fingers. Merry Christmas, Mom, Lyanna whispered. And Avina's heart shattered. Then reformed.
Whole.
Healed. Home. She dropped to her knees, pulling Lyanna into her arms, holding this precious child who'd chosen her, who'd saved her, who'd given her a reason to believe in family again. Merry Christmas, baby girl, Avina whispered back, her voice breaking. Merry Christmas. Cadian knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around both of them. His mate.
His daughter.
His family. And around them, the pack began to sing. Not a victory song this time, but something older. Sacred. A song of new beginnings, of bonds forged in fire and sealed in love, of second chances and Christmas miracles. The snow continued to fall outside.
Soft. Silent.
Beautiful. And inside Silverfong's stronghold, a wolfless girl who'd once believed she was nothing found everything. A broken alpha remembered how to hope. And a traumatized child spoke words that would echo through the years. We're a family now. Forever. 6 months later, spring came to Silverfong territory with explosive color. Wildflowers carpeted the mountain meadows. The air smelled like pine and fresh rain and new growth. And in the training yard behind the stronghold, Avina Railvoss, Luna of Silverfong Pack, was getting her ass thoroughly kicked. Again, Cadian circled her, his stance relaxed but ready. You're telegraphing your movements. I can see the strike coming from a mile away. Maybe because I've been training for 6 months, Avina panted, wiping sweat from her forehead. And you've been doing this for decades? Excuses. But his eyes gleamed with affection. Again, Avina lunged. Cadian sidestepped effortlessly, hooking her ankle and sending her sprawling. She hit the dirt with a grunt. I hate you, she muttered. No, you don't. Cadian offered his hand, pulling her up. You love me. Debatable right now. He grinned, that rare, beautiful smile that still made her heart skip, and pulled her close. Liar, he murmured against her lips. Before she could respond, he kissed her.
Deep. Claiming.
The bond between them hummed with contentment. Gross. They broke apart, laughing, to find Lina watching from the yard entrance, her nose wrinkled in exaggerated disgust. She'd grown in the past 6 months, taller, stronger, more confident. The nightmares had faded. Her voice had returned fully. She was thriving. You two are always kissing, Lina complained, but her smile betrayed her. Blame your father, Avina said. He's very demanding. I am the alpha, Cadian said seriously. It's my job to be demanding. Uh-huh. Lina rolled her eyes in a gesture she'd learned from Avina. Mom, Mira says it's time for my lessons. Already. Avina glanced at the sun. All right, sweetheart. I'll be there in a few minutes. Actually, Cadian interrupted, his voice suddenly careful. I need to talk to your mother about something. Can you start without her? Lina looked between them suspiciously. Are you in trouble, Mom? I don't think so. You're not in trouble, Cadian assured her. I just need a moment. Lina shrugged. Okay, but don't kiss too much. It's weird. She skipped off, leaving them alone. Avina turned to Cadian, raising an eyebrow. What do you need to talk about? For the first time since she'd known him, Cadian looked nervous. Actually, genuinely nervous. He stopped. Started again. We've been bonded for 6 months. I'm aware, Avina said slowly. And you've been an incredible Luna. The pack adores you. Lina is happier than I've ever seen her. And he took her hands. I wake up every morning grateful that you crashed on that mountain road. Avina's heart squeezed. Cadian, what is this about? He took a breath. Then, impossibly, knelt. Avina's eyes went wide. We have the bond, Cadian said quietly. We have the pack's recognition. But there's one thing we haven't done. From his pocket, he pulled out a ring. Simple silver, set with a stone that gleamed like starlight. Marry me, Cadian said. Not because the bond demands it, not because tradition requires it, but because I want the world to know you chose me. And I chose you. His silver eyes met hers. Marry me, Avina. Make this official in every way that matters. Avina couldn't breathe.
Couldn't speak.
Could only stare at this powerful, beautiful, impossible man kneeling before her, offering everything. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes. Cadian surged to his feet, sliding the ring onto her finger and kissing her like his life depended on it. The bond blazed between them.
Joy. Love.
Forever. When they finally broke apart, Avina was crying and laughing at the same time. You know Lionel is going to be impossible about this, right? She said. She's been asking when we're getting married for months. I know. Kadian grinned. I asked her permission first. You what? She's the one who picked the ring. Avina's heart overflowed. This man, this family, this life. Once, she'd thought she was worthless. Invisible. Not enough. But she'd been wrong. She was exactly enough. She was everything. And this was her happily ever after. What was your favorite moment in Avina and Kadian's journey? The first time Lionel spoke? The Christmas Eve battle? The proposal? 2. If you could have one scene expanded into a bonus chapter, which would it be? 3. Would you read a sequel following Lionel's story when she's older? Or perhaps a prequel about how Kadian became alpha? Thank you for joining Avina, Kadian, and Lionel on their journey from broken to whole. May you always find your own Christmas miracle.